So Igor, thank you for coming on Spectator TV. In the magazine this week, we have an interview with Maurizio De Luca, which lifts the lid on the hot debate when it comes to art restoration.
Yes. This was triggered really by a really terrible restoration at the National Gallery. It's a Piero della Francesca Nativity that's had two shepherds in the background, and they've been retouched and restored in such a way that the Guardian called it, kind of compared it to the Monkey Christ, the famous Monkey Christ from northern Spain, where those old ladies completely messed up this fresco.
Can you please talk us through the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to art restoration?
The two massive Michelangelos that he focuses on in this book, and some of those, to my eyes, strike me as kind of a bit outlandish and reduces the subtlety and the expression, the ambiguity of the originals. There's these horses in this horse in the Conversion of Saul. You have this like lovely kind of expression on the horse's head in the original, and it's completely gone. You have this complete, like, I find this baffling, and he doesn't really justify it in the book, but he completely changes the entire layout and look of Damascus in the background from what looks like an Oriental city to something that is a pastiche of a Roman city, which may be justified by the academic evidence, but looks just hopeless. And then there's also this kind of very cartoonish update, changing the features of this woman in the crucifixion, where, you know, she's sort of in fright, but actually in the original, the look could be many things. It's more ambiguous. Whereas in the updating, it's definitely, she is frightened. It's much more like a moment in a film.
And then I suppose you were showing me a couple before we started recording and asked me which one I thought was a restoration. And I'm a little bit too scared to say it in front of you because I'm worried that I will be shown to have no artistic taste whatsoever. But is there such a thing as, you know, a work of art that can ever truly be restored? Or do you think every time there is a restoration, it will just lose something?
Definitely. You're essentially recreating the work. You're creating a 20th century version of that work. And there is something to be said in favor of this. To some extent, what you're doing is you're making it clear that actually these Renaissance works were probably far more vulgarly crisp and far more cartoonish than we imagine. The process of time has made them really tasteful, disheveled, subtle, you know, all the things that we really kind of respect. But actually, a bit like Greek statues, which are really like disgustingly colored in like very bright, quite gaudy colors, which I think would shock us if we did it. If we painted all those white statues that we know and love suddenly in these gaudy colors, I think we'd be pretty outraged. But to some extent, that brings us closer to how they would have seen it. On the other hand, there's a lack of modesty in just saying that you're essentially vandalizing this work. Often the people who do the most vandalism throughout society are those who think they know.
Those who think they know the mind and have the talent of Michelangelo.
Right.
So I suppose just finally on that, what do you think would happen? You know, some of these original artists were here today. Do you think that they would be potentially horrified that the work was being restored? Or do you think perhaps they would think, well, at least more people get to see it?
I think they probably would be horrified because the sort of academic instinct is a modern one, is really a sort of creation of the Enlightenment. The idea that these are there in perpetuity in a certain way, that we ossify them, is something kind of, it's much part of modernity. And I think these artists would have felt an affinity, a close affinity to someone like, I mean, the Chapman brothers are famous for essentially buying up a whole series of Goya etchings and totally vandalizing them. I mean, original Goya etchings. And I think to some extent, I mean, I don't really rate them, not because they're vandalism. I think you can do good vandalism and bad vandalism, but because at least there's a sort of honesty to the fact that they're recreating something. They're creating something anew. And so if De Luca was saying, look, I'm just I think I'm better than Michelangelo, then I would have more respect.
Yeah.
But it's the sort
Come
of
out and say it.
just say it. Maybe it is. I mean, to some extent, that is the sort of arrogance of a lot of these restorers. So I don't think someone like Michelangelo would have respected that at all.
Thank you, Igor. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure.